Pharma industry and association of with pharma industry and doctors. Why is it considered a taboo? You were in the medical council also. So how do you look at it?
I think during our tenure and even thereafter also, the medical council is clearly defined in consultation with the Association of Pharmacists that a particular gift beyond that particular range is not something which is acceptable. I mean, pharma companies and some of the doctors or professionals have really gone beyond the acceptable limit
Exactly.
of getting.
Although they are needed,
Yes.
but they went too far.
Yes.
And it is a problem when they buy an organization, and pharma industries are active in US, UK, India, everywhere. But going bizarre and not being there for the right reasons, unethical practices can be a serious problem. It's a shame that you can exploit it to that level. But they have a role to play, and for all the basic research that happens, for the R&D that you need them, because they are needed. One cannot say that relationship should not be there, but it should be ethical and well regulated.
Yes.
Views on that, Dr. Nick?
I completely agree that there is a role for advancement of science and availability of medicines. And I think good ethical practices and regulation, that's the key.
Mr. Phanisha, on that.
Yeah, as we were talking already in the morning today, that pharma plays a role in bringing new molecules, and it requires a lot of investment from their side. It is kind of very imperative that they will be spending a lot on their marketing efforts, making it ethical and also effective. If we look at some of other markets like US and all, they have introduced Sunshine Act, and India, we are talking about UCPMP and all. So all these acts, if implemented in a right way, can put in right checks and balances where we have.
So there is a role, and it can be regulated, and it can be ethical and acceptable.
Yes.
So we cannot just make it into, we can't write it off. At the same time, it shouldn't become, a source or the reason for malpractice, because it's not mandatory that if you're using a product, you will use it because somebody took you for a ride. If you're doing it, it's the wrong thing to do. At the same time, associations doing conferences which are funded, exorbitantly, where you may not need that money, also should be discouraged. It should be an ethical conference. It should be conferences that are about academics. So we should not be selling ourselves into it, if I can use that word crudely. There should be a symbiosis, mutualism, where they provide because you can't have conferences also happening. Most of the time you would be confused. But otherwise, conferences are academic. In the West, if you go, there's nothing like gala dinners and lunches. There are no free lunches. You buy your lunch and you come for the academics, pay registration fee and attend it. There's no reason for a huge banquet where, or I use the word that, going on a cruise and then doing a meeting. These kind of things can be a really glaring examples of malpractice, and therefore we should try to have a middle path. A check and balance is necessary, which shouldn't be like the MCI putting a stick all the time, but MCI can be a guideline. They expect the doctors to behave that way, so we don't need a police. They are doing what they're supposed to do. They are a regulatory body. They are stopping it because it is supposed to be stopped. But we can do it ourselves.